The starship Hand of Peace was a small, elegant vessel, built not for war but for conversation. Its smooth, white hull slid silently through the assigned corridor of space, approaching the glittering heart of the Galaxy Council. Inside, Ambassador Kim Ji-ho checked the seal on the data core in his hands for the third time. It was cool and heavy, a physical weight that matched the hope it carried. His aide, Lee Mina, finished adjusting her formal jacket. The final approach vector is confirmed, Ambassador. The Nexus control grid has granted us docking permission at Central Spire. Thank you, Mina, Ji-ho said, his voice calm. He was a man built for patience, with gentle eyes that had seen many negotiations. He believed in steps, not leaps. Today was a big step. Humanity had expanded quickly, and the older species of the Galaxy Council watched them with nervous eyes. They called humans unpredictable, too emotional, too chaotic. This gift, Ji-ho thought, would change that story. The Central Nexus was a breathtaking sight. It wasn't a planet but a massive, intricate construction of crystal and light, floating in the void. It spoke of power that was thousands of years old. The Hand of Peace seemed like a child's toy next to it. As their shuttle carried them to the main spire, Mina looked out the viewport. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Ji-ho agreed. "And it is also very afraid. Remember, Mina, fear often wears the mask of anger or pride. Our job is to gently remove that mask." They were met in the grand docking bay by a pair of Grun functionaries. The Grun were tall and slender, with smooth gray skin and large, dark eyes that showed no pupil. They moved with a quiet, fluid grace. They did not smile. They simply gestured for the humans to follow. The walk to the council chamber was long, through halls that echoed with a deep, ancient silence. Murals depicted species joining the council, leaving their individual weapons at the door. The message was clear: order above all. Chaos was the only enemy. The chamber itself was a half-circle of towering seats, each occupied by a representative of a founding species. In the center was a wide, empty floor of polished black stone. The air hummed with a low-energy field. As Ji-ho and Mina walked to the center, every alien eye followed them. The feeling was not of welcome, but of examination. The High Prelate, a Grun with an intricate silver circlet on its brow, spoke first. Its voice was soft, yet it filled the room perfectly. "Ambassador Kim Ji-ho of Seoul, you have requested this audience. The council listens." Ji-ho bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had studied carefully. "High Prelate, honored members of the Galaxy Council, thank you for your welcome. Humanity comes before you not with demands, but with an open hand." He lifted the data core. "For generations, our species has struggled against disease. It is our great enemy. In overcoming it, we have learned much about life itself." He paused, choosing his simple words with care. "We have created a system, a medical tool, tiny machines smaller than cells that can learn a body's language and defend it from any sickness. They adapt, they heal. We have used it to end plagues on 3 of our own worlds." A soft ripple of movement went through the council. The Kirin representative, a being with fine scales and quick, clever fingers, leaned forward. His translator produced a clipped, interested tone. "Adapt, you say? They change? What stops them from adapting to become a sickness themselves?" "They are built with a final, simple command," Ji-ho explained. "To preserve the life of their host above all. They cannot violate this. It is the core of their design. We call it the Guardian Protocol." "Life is not meant to be so flexible," murmured another counselor, a being whose form seemed to shift slowly in its seat. "The forms are set. The patterns are clean. This is a messy technology." Ji-ho felt the first cold trickle of misunderstanding. He pressed on. "We offer you the complete designs. Freely. Take it. Study it. Let your own scientists see its truth. It is a gift, meant to show our desire to join this community, to share what we have for the benefit of all." He placed the data core on a small pedestal that rose from the floor. A beam of light scanned it. Schematics, genetic codes, and years of clinical data flashed on the vast screens around the chamber. The council was silent for a long time. The High Prelate's large eyes were fixed on the streaming data. Finally, it spoke. A gift. You bring the product of your chaotic, biological experimentation into this place of order. You call it a guardian, but we see its nature. It invades. It changes. It does not respect the pure form. It is the very essence of your species' danger. Jiho's heart sank. Respectfully, High Prelate, you see a weapon where there is only a tool. A tool for healing. Healing that rewrites the sacred code of life. The Kiran's voice was sharper now. You give us a key that can pick any lock, even the locks on our own evolution. This is not a gift. It is a demonstration. You show us you can create life that obeys only its own chaotic rules. Where is the control? Where is the off switch? The off switch is the health of the patient. Mina spoke up, her voice clear but tense. When the threat is gone, they become inert. So you claim, the Grun High Prelate said. This gentle voice had turned cold. The law is clear. The greatest crime against the Galactic Order is to knowingly carry a weapon of mass corruption into the sacred nexus. The punishment for such a crime, to protect all life from the contagion, is prescribed. It is cleansing by stellar flame. The words hung in the air. Jiho felt the blood drain from his face. He understood the words, but their meaning was too monstrous to accept. This is a mistake. We are diplomats. This is a medical device. You are a carrier, the High Prelate stated, as if discussing a fact of physics. The data core is the infected vessel. Your species' chaotic biology is the source. The law is ancient. It is pure. It must be upheld before all, so all understand the strength of our order. Mina cried out as two Grun guards seized her arms. No, you can't. Ambassador. Jiho was grabbed as well. He did not struggle. He looked from the Kiran's avaricious face to the shifting form of another counselor, to the impassive mask of the High Prelate. He saw not malice, but a terrible absolute certainty. They were not evil. They were so sure of their own rightness that his death was just a necessary step in an equation. He was dragged towards a circular opening in the floor that now glowed with a terrible inner heat. He looked back at Mina. He gave her a small, sad shake of his head. Do not fight. Then he looked up, directly into the visual pickup that was broadcasting the ceremony across the civilized galaxy. He thought of his family on Earth. He thought of the parks in Seoul, full of life. He hoped they would not see this, but he knew they would. The heat was immense. The light from the phased plasma chamber below was blinding. The council watched, their faces solemn. This was not anger. It was a ritual, a sanitation. Kim Jiho, who had come with an open hand and a gift, had one final, coherent thought as the fire took him. It was not of fear for himself, but a crushing sorrow for the galaxy, and for what his people would now have to become. The Galaxy Council's broadcast did not end with the fire. It lingered on the now empty ceremonial floor, the black stones scorched and clean once more. The image was one of perfect, sterile order restored. The High Prelate's voice returned, calm and clear, as if commenting on the weather. The contagion has been purified. The law has been served. Let all worlds witness the strength of our unity and the price of chaos. The nexus remains secure. Then the transmission cut. The official galactic news feeds began their analysis, speaking in careful terms about necessary protocols and the dangers of unfettered biological science. On Earth, in the main orbital command center known as the bunker, the broadcast had played on the main screen. The room was packed with military advisors, diplomats, and council members. When it ended, the screen went dark. For a full minute, there was no sound at all. No one moved. The silence was thick and heavy, pressing down on them. Prime Minister Choi Yuna sat in her chair at the head of the long table. She had not blinked for the entire duration. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her, but they were white at the knuckles. To her right, General Park Dae stood like a statue, his eyes fixed on the dark screen as if he could still see the afterimage of the flames. A young comms officer, Lieutenant Kim Suk, made a small, choked sound in his throat. He quickly clamped a hand over his mouth, his shoulders trembling. The human sound seemed to break the spell. General Park Day turned slowly. His face was a mask of carved stone. He looked not at the politicians, but at the chief communications technician. "Confirm the source and integrity of that transmission," he said. His voice was low, rough, but utterly controlled. "Sir, it was a council-wide broadcast. No distortion. It was real." The technician's voice was barely a whisper. "Ambassador Jiho's biosigns?" Day asked. "Gone, sir. At the exact moment of the event. Telemetry from the Hand of Peace confirms it. The ship is locked down. Crew is under guard. Lee Mina's signal is still active, but isolated. They have her in a detention cell." Another minister, an older man, finally found his voice. It was shaky with disbelief. This is an act of war. A barbaric, insane act. We must lodge the strongest possible protest. We must demand an immediate demand." General Day interrupted. He did not raise his voice, but the word cut through the room like a knife. "What will we demand? An apology? The bodies?" He gestured to the blank screen. "They burned our apology. They burned the body. They have shown us exactly what they think of our demands. They have shown us exactly what they think of us." Prime Minister Yuna finally moved. She unlaced her fingers and placed her palms flat on the table. She stood up. Every eye turned to her. She was not a tall woman, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the room. "They did not just kill our diplomat," she said. Her voice was quiet, hollowed out by shock, but perfectly clear. "They did not just execute an ambassador. They burned our hand of friendship. They declared our science to be a plague. They called our very nature a crime. They have told the entire galaxy that to be human is a death sentence." She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each person. She saw the grief, the fury, the fear, and the dawning, terrible understanding. "There is no room for protest," Yuna stated. "There is no forum for appeal. They have destroyed that forum. By their own ancient law, they have defined this as a matter of purity versus corruption. There is no middle ground in that." She turned to General Day. "You have the code word, General. The one we prayed we would never use." A final, older advisor, his face pale, spoke up. "Prime Minister, we must think. The cost. Total war? Against the entire Galaxy Council? Their fleets outnumber us 100 to 1. Their technology is predictable." Day finished for him. "Their thinking is rigid. They follow rules. Today they followed their oldest rule." He stepped closer to Yuna. "They believe they have cauterized a wound. They believe they have ended the problem with a single, clean act of fire. They believe we will now be quiet or we will come in a rage straight at their guns. That is what their rules say will happen." Yuna nodded. "So we will not follow their rules." She took a deep, slow breath. The grief was there, a raw and screaming thing inside her, but she walled it off behind a door of cold iron. That was for later. For now, there was only one path. General Park Day. Execute Protocol Oxidize. The words fell into the silent room. Protocol Oxidize. The total and unrestricted mobilization of the human species for existential conflict. Not for conquest, but for survival. And for vengeance. General Day stood at his full height. "By your command, Prime Minister." He turned to the room. "All of you to your stations. Now, activate the silent alarm. No public broadcasts yet. Bring all fleets to readiness condition black. Activate the sleeper networks. Power up the shipyards. Shut down all non-essential travel. Do it quietly. The light show comes later." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Officers started speaking into headsets, their voices low and urgent. Screens lit up with maps and fleet dispositions. Yuna walked to a large window that looked out on the Earth, a beautiful blue marble hanging in the blackness. She saw the pinprick lights of orbital habitats, the faint trails of shuttle traffic. Normal life. It was all about to change forever. Lee Mina was still alive out there. Jiho was gone. Her friend, a good man, reduced to ash in a foreign room as a lesson General Day came to stand beside her. "We will get Mina back," he said, his voice quieter now. "Or we will avenge her too." Yuna did not look away from Earth. "It is not about getting anyone back anymore, General. It is about making sure that no human is ever looked at as nothing more than kindling again." They wanted to purge a contagion. A single, hot tear traced a path down her cheek, but her voice was steel. "Let us show them what a real contagion looks like. Let us show them how fast chaos can spread." The order did not echo with sirens or public announcements. It traveled through buried fiber optic cables, through encrypted quantum channels, through 1,000 secure data paths. The code word oxidize was a single, silent spark that fell into a world soaked in preparation. On Mars, inside the Deep Canyon shipyards, Foreman Kong Jin was drinking bad coffee when his secure tablet vibrated. He read the two-word message. For a moment, he just sat there, the taste of the coffee turning to ash in his mouth. He had built ships for 20 years. He had a daughter at university on Ganymede. He thought of her smile, and then he thought of the broadcast everyone would soon see. The grief was a physical pain in his chest. He crushed it. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly in the suddenly quiet control room. "Listen up." His voice was a bark that cut through the low hum of machinery. Every face turned to him, young engineers and veteran welders. "Condition black. Right now. All construction teams, switch to battle priority alpha. I want the Jeju and the Busan moved to launch berths in 6 hours, not 6 days. Power up their cores. Load the ammunition racks. Do it by the book, but do it fast." No one asked why. They saw the look on his face. They moved. The giant cranes, which usually moved with slow grace, began to pivot with new urgency. The sounds of construction didn't get louder, but they got harder, sharper, more purposeful. Above Earth, Admiral Song Hyun sat in her ready room on the battle carrier unyielding resolve. She had watched the broadcast alone. She had not cried. She had simply watched the flames, memorizing the look on Ambassador Jiho's face before the end. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. That, somehow, was worse. Her comms officer's voice came over the secure line. "Admiral, command confirms. Protocol Oxidize is in effect. Fleet-wide transition to war footing. Orders are inbound." "Understood," Song Hyun said. Her voice was calm. "Send to all captains. Silence all non-essential transmissions. Recall all crew from leave. Prepare for immediate combat jump. And get me a secure channel to the vengeance of peace." Across the solar system, the change happened. Tugs pulled great cargo freighters off the main shipping lanes, directing them to safe orbital holds. The glittering passenger liners heading to the Saturn resorts were told to return to port, their confused passengers given no explanation. On Luna, the great telescopes normally pointed at distant nebulae swiveled to focus on the predicted approach vectors from Council Space. In the bunker, General Park Day stood before a holographic map of human space. Dozens of senior officers watched the icons shift from peaceful blue to a vigilant yellow, and then, one by one, to a hostile, burning red. "Phase 1 is not mobilization," Day said, pointing to the map. "It is misdirection. They expect us to scream and charge the Nexus. We will not give them a target. We will go dark." He turned to a woman in plain clothes, Director Kim of Covert Operations. "Your people are ready?" Director Kim nodded. Her face was severe. "The sleeper agents have been in position for years. They are low-level. Cleaners, cargo loaders, data entry clerks on key council worlds and stations. They have been waiting for the wake-up call. They have their packages. The packages were not bombs. They were data slugs and viral codes. Some contained financial algorithms designed to create silent, cascading errors in the Kirin Merchant Guild's ledgers. Others held architectural flaws for the Grun central life support systems, tiny errors that would cause gradual critical failures. Another was a simple, robust computer virus disguised as a media file meant for the galactic entertainment networks. It would do nothing but slowly, randomly, switch subtitle languages and distort audio, a small seed of confusion. Activate them all. Priority 1, the Kirin financial hubs and the Grun logistics networks. We don't burn their ships yet. We tangle their supply lines. We empty their pockets. Let them feel the chaos in their daily lives first. Back on the unyielding resolve, Admiral Song Hyun's face appeared on the main screen of the Vengeance of Peace. Fleet Admiral Kong Jin looked back at her. They had served together for a long time. No pleasantries were exchanged. The order is given, Kong Jin said. I saw, Song Hyun replied. My carrier group is ready to jump to the Proxima rally point in 15 minutes. Where do you want us? Kong Jin studied his own tactical display. Not at Proxima. Take the Resolve and your escorts to the Gibson Belt. Hide in the mineral clouds. Wait. Wait for what? She asked. Our people are ready to fight. Wait for them to get confused, Kong Jin said, a cold, hard light in his eyes. The Council's response will be methodical. They will send scout fleets to our border worlds, expecting to find military buildup. Let them find empty space or civilian traffic. Let them report back that we are hiding, that we are afraid. Let their certainty grow. He leaned forward. Our first military strike will not be against a warship. It will be against their idea of us. We will let their own confusion become our weapon. On Earth, Prime Minister Choi Yoon finally left the command center. She walked down a quiet corridor to a small, soundproofed room. Inside, a state broadcaster waited with a camera. She sat down, smoothing her jacket. She did not look at the script on the screen in front of her. She looked directly into the lens. People of Earth, she began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of a world. People of the Sol system and of all our colonies, you will soon learn of a terrible crime committed against our species today. Our ambassador, Kim Ji-ho, was murdered by the Galaxy Council. She paused, letting the words hang. He was not killed in a battle. He was executed, burned alive. They called him a disease. They called our science a plague. They have declared that to be human is a crime. Her expression did not change, but her eyes hardened. Therefore, as of this moment, the human species is in a state of total war. This is not a war we sought. This is a war for our right to exist. Our fleets are moving. Our defenses are active. Further instructions for civilian preparedness will follow. She took a final breath, her gaze piercing through the screen. To the Galaxy Council, you sought to purify the galaxy with fire. You have only succeeded in lighting a fuse. We are coming. The broadcast ended, not with a dramatic logo, but with a simple, stark black screen in his cell on the Nexus. Lee Mina heard nothing of this, but she felt a change. The vibrations in the floor of the station were different, a subtle shift in the hum of the energy grid. She curled her fingers into her palms, her nails biting into her skin. She did not know what was happening, but she felt a tiny, fierce hope ignite in the darkness. They would not leave Jiho's ashes to cool alone. She was sure of it. The Galaxy Council did not panic. Panic was for chaotic, younger species. They observed. They analyzed. They responded according to doctrine. When human space went quiet, the Council's high command interpreted it as predicted. The humans were in disarray, shocked into silence by the harsh lesson. Their emotional nature had collapsed under the weight of logic. The Kirin trade lords, however, were the first to feel a different reality. On the bustling commercial hub of Ki Arval, a low-level data clerk named Tor noticed a small error. A shipment of high-grade engine coolant was registered as organic compost in the central ledger. He flagged it for review. Minutes later, another error appeared. Then another. The numbers on his screen began to swim, entries from different accounts bleeding into each other. He called his supervisor. By the end of the hour, the entire Merchant Guild's financial network was experiencing what the head treasurer could only describe as a soft collapse. Transactions were lost. Accounts were frozen. Debts and credits were scrambled beyond immediate repair. It was not an attack. It was a profound, system-wide embarrassment. The flow of wealth, the lifeblood of the Kirin, began to stutter. At the same time, on a Grun habitat sphere, a climate technician named Vel could not understand the readings. The oxygen-nitrogen mix in Sector 7 was slowly tilting off balance. The system's autocorrection protocols seemed sluggish, applying fixes that made the problem slightly worse. It was not dangerous yet, but it was illogical. The system was designed to be perfect. He ran diagnostics, finding nothing. But in the code, buried deep, was a tiny flaw, an assumption that atmospheric pressure would never dip below a certain point. The human-introduced virus had not broken the system. It had gently encouraged it to follow its own perfect logic down a wrong path. The Council's military response proceeded. A fleet of 12 Grun cruisers, sleek and silver, jumped to the edge of human space near the colony of New Tegu. They expected to see defensive platforms, ship formations, the frantic preparations of a species lashing out. They found a quiet, green world. Sensor scans showed normal civilian traffic. A few cargo haulers, a passenger shuttle descending to the surface. No energy weapon signatures. No fleet signatures. The lead cruiser's commander was perplexed. He opened a channel, broadcasting the Council's demand for immediate surrender and submission to inspection. A human voice answered, crackling with the static of a simple civilian comms array. This is Colony Director Park of New Tegu. We have no military assets here. We are a farming and research community. Please state your purpose. The Grun commander repeated the demand for surrender. We surrender, Director Park replied, his voice calm. You have 12 warships. We have tractors. What would you like us to do? This was not in the doctrine. The confusion was a tiny seed, planted in the commander's mind. He ordered a detachment of troops to descend to the main settlement. The shuttles landed in the central square. Grun soldiers in gleaming armor emerged, their weapons ready. They were met by a crowd of human colonists who just watched them. There was no fear, no anger, just quiet observation. A human child pointed at one soldier's helmet and asked its parent a question in a clear, carrying voice. The parent shushed them. The soldiers moved to secure the administration building. The doors were unlocked. The computer terminals were on, displaying agricultural data. It was a perfectly normal colony, and that was the most unsettling thing of all. Where was the rage? Where was the chaos? While the Grun were confused on New Tegu, the first true blow fell elsewhere. A small Kirin patrol fleet was ambushed in the Gibson Belt. Not by giant warships, but by a swarm of human drones, each no larger than a fighter craft. They did not come in a formation. They came like a storm of angry insects, from all directions, using the asteroid field for cover. The Kirin ships fired, their targeting computers predicting elegant evasion patterns. The human drones did not follow patterns. One dove straight at a cruiser's engine flare, sacrificing itself to overload a cooling vent. Two others latched onto a ship's sensor array, detonating small, shaped charges that blinded it. The drones communicated in short, burst signals, their tactics shifting every few seconds. They fought not to destroy the Kirin fleet, but to maim it, to send it limping home. One Kirin ship did escape. Its captain's report was frantic, full of words like unpredictable and asymmetric and biological swarm tactics. The High Command dismissed it as the exaggeration of a captain shamed by defeat against inferior numbers. But then the reports started to come in from other places. A Grun supply depot on a moon had its entire cargo of food paste contaminated. Not with poison, but with a harmless, resilient human gut bacteria. It made the paste non-toxic but completely inedible to Grun digestive systems, causing severe illness. The label on the storage tanks had been quietly changed by a human janitor weeks ago, reading Grade A, approved. It was a biological attack, but not one that killed. It just made the enemy weak, uncomfortable, and utterly disgusted. The Council's perfect order was being chipped away not by a hammer, but by 1,000 little needles. Their money systems were messy. Their environments were subtly wrong. Their sure, logical predictions of human behavior were proving false. The silent, cold fury of humanity was expressing itself not in a scream, but in a systematic unraveling of everything the Council relied upon. Back on the Nexus, the atmosphere was shifting. The Kirin representatives were arguing loudly about trade losses, their greed overcoming their dignity. The Grun were quietly, intensely debating the illogical reports from the front. The unified front was cracking under strain no one had planned for in her cell. Mina heard the raised alien voices in the corridor outside. She allowed herself a small, thin smile. It was not a smile of joy, but of grim recognition. They were learning. Humanity was not meeting them on the field of battle they had chosen. Humanity was changing the game. She whispered into the empty, dark room, words Jiho had once said to her during a difficult negotiation. If they will not meet you at the table, you must make the floor beneath their feet unsteady. The floor, it seemed, was now trembling. The council's patience for subtlety ran out. The confused reports, the logistical nightmares, the silent defiance. It was an insult to their order. The High Prelate authorized a decisive response. The obliteration of a major human outpost. The target was the terraforming colony on Viridian 3, a symbol of humanity's rapid, unchecked growth. The order was simple: cleanse it. Show the cost of chaos. A full battle group of 20 Grun capital ships arrived at Viridian 3. They hung in the high orbit, beautiful and deadly. Their commander sent the formal declaration of extermination to the colony below. He expected screams, panic, futile attempts to flee. The colony director, a woman named Insumin, sent back a one-word text reply on an old, simple channel. Noted. Then the colony's power grid shut off. Every light on the planet's surface went dark. The Grun sensors could still detect the life signs of the colonists, clustered deep underground in fortified shelters. But the surface was dark and still. It was eerie. The Grun commander gave the order. Phased plasma lances fired, brilliant spears of light meant to cut continents. They struck the planet's surface, carving great glowing wounds into the rock and soil. It was a terrifying display of power. The ground shook, but it did not crack. The deep bunkers, engineered to withstand asteroid impacts, held. The lances burned the surface bare, but they could not reach the heart. The Grun ships moved lower, preparing for a sustained bombardment to dig the humans out. They did not see the mines. The humans had not buried explosives. They had buried powerful electromagnetic pulse generators, wrapped in rock and stealth coating. As the Grun ships entered the lower atmosphere, the ground itself seemed to erupt in silent, invisible waves. The pulses were targeted, short-range. They washed over the lead ships. On the bridge of the Grun flagship, every screen flickered and died. The graceful hum of the engines stuttered into a sickening groan. Artificial gravity failed for 3 seconds, long enough to send crewmen tumbling. The ship was not destroyed. It was blinded, deafened, and crippled in mid-air. It hung there, a great silver whale caught in a net of nothingness. From hidden bays in the scarred canyons, human ships rose. They were not beautiful. They were blocky, brutal things, all armor and weapon mounts. They did not fire from a safe distance. They closed in, fast and relentless. While the Grun targeting computers were rebooting, trying to find a logical pattern, the human ships were already among them. A human cruiser, the Soul's Fury, took a direct hit to its forward section. The Grun watched on visual as the ship's hull buckled, atmosphere venting in a great frozen cloud. Their sensors calculated the damage as catastrophic, a kill. The Soul's Fury did not drift away. Its remaining engines flared, burning at an alarming intensity, and it rammed itself into the side of the Grun flagship. The explosion was not clean plasma. It was metal, fire, and sheer, brutal force. The Grun had never seen such a thing. A ship was a precious, logical asset. You withdrew it when damaged. You did not use it as a projectile. It was wasteful. It was insane. On the ground, the human soldiers emerged. They wore heavy, powered armor, making them look like thick, slow-moving tanks. The Grun ground troops, lighter and faster, fired their energy rifles. The beams scorched the human armor, but often did not penetrate. The humans kept coming. They fired solid-slug rifles, the kinetic impact cracking Grun armor even when it didn't pierce it. They fought in tight, adaptive units, covering each other, with no apparent central command. A Grun officer watched in disbelief as a human soldier, whose leg was severed at the knee by a plasma cutter, used his last moments to crawl forward and attach a magnetic demolition charge to a dropship's landing gear. The human was retrieving the body of a fallen comrade when the second blast caught him. He died pulling his friend into a crater. This was the true horror for the Council forces. It was not the humans' weapons, which were powerful but understandable. It was their tenacity, their willingness to endure, to sacrifice, to fight from a state of injury that would leave any Grun or Kirin immobile with shock. Their biology was a nightmare of resilience. Their minds operated on a different scale of cost. The battle group was shattered, not destroyed, but broken. The survivors retreated, carrying images of the Soul's Fury's final act and the crawling, relentless human soldier. News of Viridian 3 spread through the Council fleets not as a victory, but as a chilling case study. The humans did not fight fair. They fought to win, and their definition of winning included levels of loss the Council found unthinkable. Meanwhile, the Kirin problems got worse. The sleeper agent on a key refueling station, a quiet man named Park Dae-hoon who worked in waste reclamation, finally activated his package. It was a small data chip. He inserted it into a maintenance terminal used to order cleaning supplies. The chip did not attack the station's core systems. It simply altered the recipe for the standard fuel catalyst blend by 0.5%. The change was within safety margins. It would pass all automated checks. Weeks later, Kirin warships that had refueled at that station began experiencing unexplained engine fluctuations. The inefficiency was tiny, but across a fleet it meant shorter jump ranges, slower response times, and increased wear. The Kirin engineers tore their ships apart looking for a saboteur or a weapon. They found nothing. The problem was in the fuel, a ghost in the machine. It was the kind of subtle, long-term sabotage that drove logical minds to distraction. The Council's war was no longer a clean surgical strike. It was a brawl in the dark against an enemy who bit, clawed, and refused to fall down. The Grand Fleet was still overwhelmingly powerful, but a new, cold fear was seeping into its ranks. They had burned a human for being a carrier of chaos. Now they were forced to admit the truth. They hadn't contained it. They had only set it loose, and it was spreading faster than any flame. The Council was not defeated. It was fractured. The clean, unified front of ancient order began to show deep cracks under the strange, relentless pressure of the human war. The Kirin were the first to break openly. Their merchant princes did not care about purity or order. They cared about profit. The human economic attacks had not just caused losses. They had shattered trust. Trading contracts were now suspect. Ledgers could not be verified. The great, flowing river of galactic commerce, which the Kirin controlled, was becoming a swamp of doubt. On the industrial world of Kar's Forge, the Kirin foreman of a starship drydock received a secret communication. It was not from his superiors. It was a text-only message translated into plain Kirin tradespeak. The humans offer a deal. They will repair your financial networks. They will provide the decryption key for the ledger virus. In return, you halt all warship production for the Council and allow human medical teams to treat your workers for the Grun fever. The Grun fever was the harmless human gut bacteria that had contaminated supplies. To the Grun, it was a disgusting illness. To the Kirin workers, it was just a miserable, week-long stomach ailment that was sweeping through their crowded habitats. The message included a simple data packet, a cure, a basic antibiotic regimen humans had developed in their own history. It worked in 72 hours. The foreman was no fool. He saw the truth. The humans were not asking for his weapons. They were asking for his inaction, and they were offering immediate relief for his people's suffering. Something the Council had only met with quarantine orders and disdain. He did not reply, but he quietly distributed the medical data. And the next time a Council inspector came to check on the progress of a cruiser's repairs, the work was slower, full of unfortunate, small delays. The Grun fracture was quieter, but deeper. It happened in the halls of logic and strategy. A young Grun tactical analyst named Vel, not the same as the technician but in their culture names described roles, was studying the Battle of Viridian 3. He rewound the sensor logs again and again. He watched the human ship, the Soul's Fury, take the hit, vent atmosphere, and then deliberately accelerate into the flagship. His logic centers struggled to process it. His superior, an older prelate of tactics, found him. You are dwelling on an anomaly, Vel. The emotional sacrifice of a lesser species. It is not efficient. Do not waste cycles on it. But it was efficient, prelate, Vel said, his large dark eyes fixed on the frozen image of the collision. That single, illogical act destroyed a command ship and broke the fleet's coordination. It created a tactical advantage that their surviving units exploited. By our definitions, it was wasteful. By the outcome, it was effective. Our models cannot account for this variable. What if they are not illogical? What if they have a different logic? The prelate was silent for a long moment. This was heresy, but it was also a question. Grun society had not faced a true question in centuries. Our order is our strength, the prelate finally said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. Meanwhile, humanity broadcasted. Not military threats, but stories. A scholar named Li Huan, his voice calm and clear, narrated the transmissions. They were beamed not in the polished council lingua franca, but in raw human languages with subtitles and cultural explanations. They showed Kim Jiho's life, not as an ambassador but as a man. Footage of him walking in a park on Earth, feeding birds. A video of him laughing with his grandchildren. They showed his daughter, now in mourning, holding a picture of him. They said he was a disease. Li Huan's voice said over the images. They burned him for offering medicine. Is this the order you serve? They showed the schematics of the medical nanites again, but slowly, clearly, with human doctors explaining how they work to cure a child of a galactic wasting sickness. They showed the same technology being used to clean pollutants from water on a poor, non-aligned world. Then, they showed the other side. They broadcast the Council's own historical records, which they had hacked, of other species being cleansed or subjugated for not conforming. They showed the Kirin exploiting primitive worlds. They showed the Grun coldly denying aid to a plague-stricken planet because the species was too volatile. The broadcasts asked a simple, devastating question, over and over. Is this order? Or is this just your power? On fringe worlds, species long suppressed by the Council watched these broadcasts. A rebellion that had been a smoldering ember for decades found fresh oxygen. They did not rise up with grand fleets. They began with small acts. A Grun supply convoy would go missing. A Kirin tax collector would be quietly refused. The symbols of Council authority were defaced. The Council's response was to tighten control, to punish these insolent worlds. This only confirmed the human message. The galaxy was seeing two models, the Council's cold, punishing order and humanity's chaotic, brutal, but oddly principled resistance. One offered only obedience. The other, even in its rage, offered a glimpse of something else. Choice. Fleet Admiral Kong Jin watched the intelligence reports on the bridge of the Vengeance of Peace. The Grand Council Armada was still assembling, a terrifying force. But its foundation was now rotten. Kirin suppliers were late. Grun tactical forecasts were filled with new, hesitant variables. The subject races in their own fleets were restless. They are trying to recalculate the universe because we do not fit their math, Kong Jin said to his executive officer. We will not give them time. He gave the order. The human fleet, which had been hiding, striking in small swarms, now coalesced. It did not head for the Council's core worlds. It headed for the Nexus itself. Not with the rage of a blind charge, but with the cold purpose of a surgeon's knife. The goal was not annihilation. It was dissection. The message sent to the Council was simple and signed by Prime Minister Choi Yuna. You held a trial without evidence. You passed a sentence without justice. We are coming to hold a trial of our own. The galaxy will be the jury. In her cell, Lee Mina felt the change in the station's rhythm. The vibrations were sharper, more urgent. Alarms that were once silent now sounded in the distance. The calm, ordered footsteps outside her door had been replaced by the sound of running. For the first time since they took Jiho, she allowed herself to hope for morning. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Nexus defense grid. It was not the ragged, furious charge the Council expected. It was a silent, organized wall of metal and resolve. Ships of all classes, from the blocky Martian cruisers to the sleek Terran carriers, formed up with a discipline that was chilling in its precision. At its center was the flagship Vengeance of Peace. The Council's Grand Armada was still scattered, its response slowed by confusion and sabotage. The defensive platforms around the Nexus powered up, their targeting systems painting the human vessels. A demand for immediate surrender blared from the Nexus. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Fleet Admiral Kong Jin watched the tactical display. He did not answer the demand. He gave a single order. Begin Operation Envoy. The human fleet did not fire on the Nexus. It fired on the defensive platforms. Not with broadsides, but with pinpoint, concentrated barrages from multiple ships at once. Each platform was crushed under a weight of fire it was not designed to withstand. Then specialized ships moved forward. They were not battleships. They were engineering vessels modified for combat. They launched grapples and cutting beams, physically disarming the remaining platforms, tearing their weapons away. It was systematic, careful destruction. They were not trying to blast the Nexus to dust. They were surgically removing its teeth. On the surface, inside the central spire, chaos reigned. The Kirin delegates were already fleeing to their private ships. The Grun military tried to maintain order, but their commands were conflicting. The serene certainty was gone. The human troop carriers descended through the broken defense grid. They landed in the Grand Docking Bay, the same one Ambassador Jiho had walked through. The ramps dropped. Soldiers in heavy armor emerged, their boots echoing on the polished floor. They met scattered resistance from Grun guards. The firefights were short, brutal, and decisive. The humans advanced squad by squad, securing corridors and control rooms. They did not kill indiscriminately. They disabled, captured, and moved on. General Park Day led a team directly to the council chamber. The great doors were sealed. A plasma cutter made short work of them. They entered, weapons raised. The chamber was not empty. The High Prelate stood in the center on the same spot where Jiho had stood. A few loyal Grun guards flanked it, their weapons shaking. The Kirin seats were empty. The other species' seats were vacant. The Prelate was alone. "Lay down your weapons," General Day's voice boomed from his helmet speaker. The Grun guards, after a moment's hesitation, let their rifles clatter to the floor. The High Prelate did not move. It looked at the human soldiers, their armor scarred from battle, their weapons still hot. "You have won through chaos," it said, its voice still trying to find its old calm. "You prove our judgment correct." Prime Minister Choi Yuna walked into the chamber then. She was not in armor. She wore a simple black suit. She walked past the soldiers until she stood face to face with the Prelate. She looked small before the tall alien, but she did not look up at it. She looked at the scorched mark on the floor. "Where is Li Mina?" Yuna asked, her voice flat. The Prelate gestured with a long hand. A soldier's visor display updated. "Found her, Madam Prime Minister. Detention Block Alpha. Alive." Yuna gave a single, small nod. Then she turned her gaze back to the Prelate. "You are wrong. We did not win through chaos. We won because your order is a lie. It is a blanket you throw over the galaxy to hide your fear." She pointed at the empty seats. "Where is your unity now? Where is your strength?" "They were weak," the Prelate said. "They were infected by your ideas. They were set free by the truth," Yuna corrected. "You held a trial here. You presented no evidence. You allowed no defense. You passed a sentence of death on an entire species for the crime of being different." She turned to face the room, as if addressing the empty seats, the watching galaxy. "So now we will hold a trial. A real one. For the next standard year, the Nexus became a courtroom. The proceedings were broadcast everywhere. The humans did not act as judges. They acted as prosecutors. They presented evidence. They showed the logs of the medical nanites, with teams of alien scientists from neutral worlds invited to examine them. They showed the financial records of Kirin exploitation. They showed the Grun's own historical edicts of purification. They brought forth witnesses. Survivors from species the Council had subdued. Workers from Kirin mining colonies. And finally, they brought Mina. She stood before the galaxy and described, in simple, clear words, watching her friend burn alive. She described the look in his eyes. Not fear. Sadness. The Council's defense was its old one. Order, purity, the greater good. But now, in the light of evidence, it sounded hollow and cruel. The humans did not ask for a death sentence. They asked for dissolution. On the final day, with the galaxy watching, the verdict was delivered not by a human, but by a collective of the assembled neutral and rebel species. The Galaxy Council was declared illegitimate. Its charter was revoked. The High Prelate and the other leaders were not executed. They were exiled, sent to a quiet, comfortable planet with no authority, to live out their days. That is your culture, not ours, Yuna had said. The war was over. The hard part began. In the newly named Hall of Remembrance, where the council chamber once was, a simple plaque was placed on the wall. Mina, now wearing the pin of a human ambassador, stood before it. The plaque was unadorned metal. It read, in human script and galactic basic, "Here they burned peace. From these ashes we choose to build. In memory of Kim Jiho outside, the work of a new galaxy started." It was messy. It was loud. It was filled with argument and compromise and fear. It was not perfect order. It was something alive and growing and finally free.